Ayelet, welcome back. It's so good to see you. We had such a wonderful conversation a few weeks back where we went into a lot of your personal experiences on your spiritual journey, which were super fascinating. And we decided to come back for part two today to hear more about how that journey really informs your work now as a manifestation coach. And so let's pick up where we left off. So
Okay.
you had this really incredible experience in India. It was a life or death type of experience, and you got clarity that you need to go to Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. So, first off, thanks for having me back. I just love
Or
talking to you. It always feels like I'm just talking to a friend because that's what we're doing here. Um, yeah, so after 6 years of living in India, did I share with you about my whole Kumbh Mela, the festival I went to, and how I was
yes,
in a tornado? We went there. Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay.
That
Okay.
was a wild story.
Okay, so I had this like download, this like voice in my head when I was in a meditation in India, just to pick up where we left off. And I had no desire to go to Israel at the point. Like the Israel was not on my radar, and I didn't really have anyone in Israel that I would even want to like stay with or to visit. I have cousins and uncles and aunts there, but they're all like ultra Orthodox. And at the time I was not observant. So it was just like not my team. It just didn't fit. So when this voice came in my meditation while I was at the tail end of my India experience, and the voice said, "Leave this country now and go to Israel and never look back." Whew, I get chills even talking about it. Um, Within 30 minutes, I had a flight booked, gone on a plane. And what I found really interesting is when you listen to your soul's calling, when you listen to that intuitive voice, and oftentimes oftentimes intuition is met with a tinge of fear, right? Like it's like, whoa, I didn't plan this. I don't know where this voice is coming from. I don't know why it's guiding me in this direction. And it feels really scary because I'm about to leave 6 years worth of a community that I've established for myself, of relationships, of connections. And here I am being sent to a country that I don't even know. I don't even what am I doing there? I don't even know.
Yeah,
So, but I listened. And one thing that I know to be true is that when we listen to that voice, even if it's met with fear, we are guided, divinely guided and supported the entire way. So what's interesting is I called up a friend of mine who was born and raised in Jerusalem, like a family friend.
yeah.
And I asked them, I said, "I'm coming to Israel in a few hours from India. I have no place to sleep, nowhere to go. I don't even know what I'm doing there." I came with two suitcases filled with Indian dresses, like the saris that they wear in India, like
Yeah.
Indian clothes, and the other one filled with, if I can say it, avodah zarah, okay, like statues that my guru had given me, like thousands of dollars worth of like gold and silver and powders and like deity, all sorts of that was my other suitcase. Okay. And so I call my friend and I'm like, "Do you know anyone in Tel Aviv that I can stay by? Because I have no interest in being in Jerusalem." And my friend says to me, "Well, lucky for you, I just signed a lease on an apartment in Tel Aviv a week ago. There's an empty bedroom. Come and stay as long as you want for free."
Amazing.
So like I call that a forehead kiss from the divine. It's like,
Yes.
thank you, God. Like it's like I know that I'm on the right path because it's just green light after. It's not always going to be green lights. I don't want to like
Yeah.
misconstrue what it looks like, but that initial stage of following that voice of intuition often is met with like just knowing that you're being guided. And so, okay, I end up in Tel Aviv, 1 month in Tel Aviv, and every single Shabbat, like Friday afternoon, I'm being like magnetized to some sort of Shabbat gathering, even though I was not keeping Shabbat at the time. My first week, I end up at some like spiritual kibbutz, like Shabbaton. And that was just like heart opening. The next Friday night, I end up in Tzfat. Once I'm in Tzfat, I get guided to someone in Jerusalem who the next Shabbat is hosting me in Jerusalem for. And every Motzei Shabbat, every Saturday night, I would take the bus back into Tel Aviv. And as the bus was entering Tel Aviv, like my whole energetic blueprint, like everything in my system constricted. Like I could
Mhm.
not be in Tel Aviv anymore. It was as though like the 6 years of deep spiritual work I did in India kind of set the stage for me to just plug into Jewish mysticism like effortlessly. So it took me not even a month of being in Tel Aviv before I just took the first apartment that I found in Jerusalem. And I walked into Mayanot Seminary and went to the Rebbitzin there, the person in charge. And mind you, I was like much old, like all the other girls are like 18, 19, like straight out of high school. And I was 27, 28 at the time. So I'm like significantly older than everybody else. And I go to her and I'm just like, I'm here to learn Torah. And she's like, okay, who are you? Where did you come from? And I was like, I came from India for the like I was there for the last 6 years. And she goes, are you sure you're at the right place? Like, you sure this is where you want to be? And I was like, absolutely. So I signed the papers, started learning right away. One thing led to another, and I ended up a few months later moving to Neve and started learning at Neve for 9 months. And but you should know, like it was 1 month, one month into learning Jewish mysticism and just acknowledging that everything I've been searching for years exists in my own tradition. That like blew me open, right? It's like I always just saw religious Judaism as an outsider looking in, right? The black hats, the black and white there, everything just felt very, it just did, I didn't see the depths to what the ritual was about. And so once I started learning, it just plugged into place for me. And I started keeping Shabbat 1 month into learning, like fully keeping Shabbat. I mean, to the
Wow.
best of my knowledge, then fully keeping Shabbat. And I kept
Yeah.
learning. And I've been keeping Shabbat ever since. So it's
Wow. Can I pause a sec? I have a question because
yeah.
it sounds like you made a huge leap very quickly.
Hmm.
Because if you're in Israel for 1 month, you're having these Shabbat experiences and then going from there to learning at a seminary, that's a big leap. So, what happened that actually made that shift in you? Because that usually takes longer for some people. Was that the energy of the place, the people you were meeting? What was it?
So I'll tell you, it didn't feel like I look at it kind of like a ladder. Like, we're always ascending. If we're growing and we're learning and we're doing the inner work, we're God willing always ascending the spiritual ladder of self-awareness, of consciousness, of connection. And if I were to have gone straight to Neve from college, let's say, then it might have been a really big leap to start keeping halacha and keeping all the mitzvot, keeping Shabbat right away. That would have felt like I'm hopping up way too many rungs too quickly. Like that's a quantum leap that can, have side effects to it. But because my experience in India for 6 years was so um
Deep.
deep and it was a strict practice, like Lehavdil, like there's obviously very big differences between Hinduism and Judaism, which we all know about, but the practices and the ritual and the commitment to truth, the commitment to service of the divine, that doesn't change between both worlds. So for me, it just felt like, oh, like right away within the first month of getting to Israel, my soul just kind of said to me, like, finally, you're home. And I have chills even talking about it because it didn't feel like I was taking a leap that was above what I could reach. It just felt like a very natural, beautiful transition. And the rituals to me all really made sense. And they only made sense because of the rigorous practice that I had come from in Israel.
Yeah, it sort of set the foundation and also created that sort of practical, ritualistic habits of and lifestyle that you need as a prerequisite of like going into halachic lifestyle where there are so many rituals, there are so many practices. It's like a whole thing, right?
Yeah, and also for me, like the practices and the rituals at the time felt very safe, right? It felt like it created a container for me that had a certain degree of boundaries that I didn't grow up with. right? Like growing up, there weren't so many rules in my home. There wasn't so much structure, restriction. And so for my archetype to plug into halacha and the blueprint, I really see it as a blueprint for connecting with the divine. Um, it like it just felt like, going from someone who in my teen years and my, like I was dating secular men. And in that world, at least the one that I came from, they, for the most part, only wanted one thing from me, right? And so to go to these Shabbat meals when I got to Israel and see the way the men look at their wives, right? To see the level of respect the women get, like that was not something that I had access to when I was looking at Judaism from the outside in, right? But being on the inside and seeing, even just singing Eshet Chayil Friday night, which is a whole song that is devoted and dedicated to the woman and praising the woman. I'm like, where do you see this? Most cultures, it's like very patriarchal. And so, I'm not saying that there aren't issues in all systems, right? Every
Yeah.
system has
But
its issues, but
you see a model for relationships that's very respectful, very, peaceful, very calming. What happened to the Indian deities and the saris?
oh, that's a whole story. Okay, I'll make it quick because I know we want to jump into a lot of things
Yes.
today. But okay. So I had left that suitcase of Indian statues at my friend's house in Tel Aviv when I got to Jerusalem. And once I started learning in seminary and understanding what Avodah Zarah actually is, and understanding that as a Jew with a Jewish soul, what the implications are to like prostrating oneself or bowing or worshiping other gods, right? That something just like made sense to me because while I was in India, I'd see everybody prostrating themselves to the guru, like literally like bowing at his feet and adorning him with flowers and jewelry and money. And the whole 6 years I was there, something inside me was like, this doesn't align with me for whatever reason. I wanted the connection because everybody was loving the like it's called bhakti, like the sacred nectar of devotion, right? There's something beautiful in devoting your life to the divine, and I wanted that. But the whole time I was like, there's got to be more than like the guru being what's at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? Like what's bigger than that? I still always saw him as a human being. And so once I understood what the deities represented, I went right away. I had my friend drive me to Tel Aviv. Oh my and I brought the suitcase back to Jerusalem. And there's this street by the Shuk in Jerusalem on Agrippas. It's the name of the street, Agrippas. And there's this dumpster there that crushes the garbage. And so I put all of the statues into a garbage bag. And I wrote in big Hebrew letters like sakana, which means danger. And I threw it into the dumpster and I watched I watched them get crushed. It's like weird to even say this out loud. And I had this like Avraham Avinu moment, right? Like that was like my initiation into Jewish life for me. It was like like how, when he goes into his father's store and starts smashing the idols, it's like I was channeling my great 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 grandfather Avraham, and he was like I felt him there, just kind of like by my side, just like giving me the permission and like also the praise and just coming back to my own roots. So that
Yeah,
was
that's
that was
beautiful.
big.
Tell
Yeah.
me that you kept the saris.
So I did
They're
because they make
beautiful.
really they and you actually saw them when you came over for Sukkot, if you remember. Now I use them because they have like crystals all over them. They're like crystals, and so I use them as decoration for my sukkah now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how you were drawn to seeing the families and the couples in more observant environments. So how did that lead you to the point where you met your husband?
Yeah, so once I really got plugged into my observance and I just kind of knew that this was the spiritual path for me, 9 months into learning, I was sitting at Neve in the cafeteria with five of my girlfriends. And it's like I had made a really clear and conscious decision in that moment to like be married by that year. And it was so clear. Like it was so clear that I was ready. I had done the work. I had primed my system to be open to receiving a partner at that point. Um, and so I'm sitting with these five girlfriends and I declared out loud. I wanted them as my witnesses. And I declared out loud, I said, Hashem, God, my intention, I know I said, dear God, if it is your will, I started with that. If it is your will, my intention is to be married by May of this year or something better. May was 6 months away from when I set that intention. So I got to work. I implemented the manifestation methodology that I teach and I used it on myself. And I did a certain amount of different processes for 21 days. And on the 21st day, I met Beryl, my husband now, and our wedding date was May 29th of that year. S- So it's just like I'm saying this as a testament to like when we are plugged in, when we are aligned, when we're doing the work, and there's a whole spiritual science to it. But when we follow the methodology, we really can see that we are co-creators and that all we have to do is set a very clear intention and then pave the way for the divine to like fill that need with the abundance.
So I love what you were saying about the declaration part. We do that a lot in my family too. Like, we're very careful with our words, right?
Mhm.
Like giving the words. And also, I like what you were saying about witnessing, like that you don't just declare it to yourself, but you have other people there observing your declaration to show, like, I mean it. I really mean it. And I love how specific you are also with like a timeline. So, I want to hear about your methodology. You were saying it was very scientific. How did you create it? Was that something that you had already developed over the years when you were in India and then you just implemented it within a more Jewish setting? Or was it something that, like, I would love to hear how that process developed.
Yeah, so it definitely we deep dived into manifestation in India. Like the whole 6 years was a manifestation boot camp, right? And so we were really put to work and and I won't get into the methodology first. Let me just answer your question. And then when I got to Israel, what occurred to me was that when I was in India, I was really like channeling the guru in order to activate the manifestation. Like I was relying on the guru to be the one to fulfill my desires. And so once I got to Israel, something about that felt very off for me. Like I wanted to go straight to source and I wanted a relationship with the divine. And so I was on this like real determined journey to connect with the right Mekubalim, right? Kabbalists, rabbis, Rebbitzins, teachers. And I would share with them all of my methodology that I picked up in India to kind of just sort through the fluff and understand like what is it that I can keep? Like what is it that is also aligned with Torah and Kabbalistic values? And how do I take this information and plug it in to a Jewish and psychological framework, right? Because I bring like psychology and Kabbalah into manifestation. So that was like a real 8 year. I mean, I'm still on this journey of like learning more and more about how Kabbalah, Judaism really is a blueprint for manifestation. And so where the methodology really begins from a Jewish perspective, I love what you said that you're really careful about the words you say, right? Because and that's a really good place to start with this methodology because Kabbalah teaches that our words are the direct link that connect the physical world and the spiritual world, right? And we're taught that every word we utter has a malach, an angel that's attached to it. And that what we're doing, and this is also very like scientific in that, there's what's called the quantum field of infinite possibilities, right? So science just basically took this field, this dimension that we call Ein Sof meaning without end, infiniteness, right? Which is like God territory that is above all the different worlds, all the way from Atzilut to Asiya, right? So it's like we call it the quantum field, we call it the realm of Ein Sof, but that is a dimension that is above our 3D world where infinite possibility really exists. And so when we're speaking, all these angels, it's like we're creating constantly these tribes of malachim, of angels. And we're using the law of attraction, whether we like it or not. So if we're speaking words of positivity, or if we're speaking words of negativity, whatever words we're uttering is basically creating this cluster of angels that then gets sent up to the quantum field. And kind of like a computer program, those words get programmed into the epicenter or the control center of this whole co-creative dance and gets computated up there, which then gets sent back down here, which then manifests as our 3D reality. And one thing that I found really fascinating when I first heard this years ago in Israel is that the words abracadabra, right? We've all heard abracadabra if we've seen a magic show, right? The magician is like, now you see it, now you don't, right? Abracadabra. What most people don't know when they hear those words is that the language abracadabra is Aramaic, which is Old Hebrew, and abarakadabra. It translates to I create as I speak. I create as I speak. So speech carries vibrational frequency, right? Speech carries vibrational frequency. So everything is energy, everything is consciousness. And there's levels of density to that consciousness, to that frequency. So, for example, this table right here might have a more dense energetic than the words that I'm speaking or even the thoughts that I'm thinking. But nonetheless, it's still all energy. And so when I learn how to, I don't like the word manipulate, but when I learn how to like be in process with the words I'm speaking, with the thoughts that I'm thinking, then we start to become more attuned to what it is that we're programming, the quantum field or the field of Ein Sof, infinite possibilities. What is the information that I'm programming this energetic world with, and how is it coming back and reflecting back to me, my 3D reality? Does that make sense?
It does. I want to ask a question here. So, two questions, and then I hope you can pick up where you left off if it's okay. So, question one is, it seems to me that speech is definitely a core piece of the manifestation. But I also have learned and believe that emotions are a big part of that. It's sort of like the engine that activates that mechanism of the speech, right? Like, what are the emotions attached to that? That's
Mhm.
question one. Question two is regarding the whole concept of manifestation in general, which is um, what is the purpose of manifestation, right? Like from the one end, it seems like in Kabbalah teaches itaruta de letata, like that the activation from below and then it triggers activation from above. Like it's basically the interrelationship between the physical and the spiritual world. But at the same time, we also know that each person comes into the world with a very specific tikkun and purpose and karma, which is an accumulation of their soul's journey over many lifetimes. So, my question to you is, how do you teach the interplay between destiny or purpose and manifestation? And also, where's the role of emotions within the process of manifestation?
Okay, so let's break it up into like two questions, right? Because I'm hearing two things there. So emotion, so it's kind of like if you look at a car or a train, right? All the different mechanics work together in order to allow the car to drive properly. right? So we need the engine, we need the wheels, we need all the different pieces of the car in order for the car to function properly. So what it means to be in alignment with source and with your highest self or your actualized self, or right? It means that your thoughts, your speech, and your emotions and your actions are all aligned with one another, right? Because if there's something that I would like to manifest, but somewhere, because we're actually manifesting according to our subconscious desires. So let me explain what I mean by that, right? A woman might come to me saying, I would like to manifest my soulmate. Okay. And so we start getting to work. And what we realize is that she's saying she wants a soulmate, but her blind spot or her subconscious is filled with conflicting desires that actually oppose what she's telling me she wants. Right. So when we get to the bottom of it and we dig and uncover what's under the iceberg, what we find is here's a woman who is afraid of losing her freedom. She's afraid of losing her identity in marriage. She's afraid of commitment, right? She's afraid of someone coming into her space and telling her how to decorate or how to organize her kitchen or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so here we have conflicting desires. So once we start doing like the inner excavation work, we start to align one's thoughts. What is it that you actually want? We'll start there, right? You say you want a soulmate, and most people, that is what they actually want. But if there's conflicting desires that are hidden in our blind spot, then that's what's actually going to run the show because we're actually manifesting according to our unconscious desires, which can mean we're manifesting according to our fears, our resistance, right? All the things that we actually don't want, even though we're saying we want one thing. So tapping into the emotions is just one part of like the whole machine that's required. Starting with the thoughts, because our subconscious will harbor our fears often. So starting to get clear on what our blind spots are, what the resistance is really important. But once we do that, aligning our intention with our emotion, which the emotion is kind of like the engine. It's what propels the machine forward and allows for the manifestation momentum to take place. So the emotions are super important because it's really what's like creating
Yeah.
movement. And yeah.
I agree that it's all like interconnected. I'm curious, how do you guide your clients to access the subconscious sort of desires, motivations, the blind spots? Is there a specific approach that you have to help them excavate that? Because that usually is so essential.
Hmm. Yeah. So oftentimes, what we find is that a lot of our deep rooted fears actually stem from childhood. Right. It could be in between the ages of 0 and 7. For some people, it goes into like teenage years when we start to form our identity. And that's where a lot of our resistance and our, in India, they called it incompletions, but I don't like that word because I don't like feeling like anybody's incomplete or we're always incomplete for the rest of our lives, so long as we're in like a meat suit, you know? And so we start to do like the deep excavation work where we I do like a sort of kind of regression process with people where I take them back into their childhood and they're in a bit of a trance or meditative state. And we can go into some of these memories without necessarily reactivating the trauma. Like I wouldn't use this technique on people who are dealing with, like trauma with like capital T situations, but for a lot of people it helps to go back there and to put yourself back in that experience. So for example, when I was 8, I had my first crush on a boy named Tommy, true story. And Tommy came up to me one day while I was 8 years old, looked me in the eyes, and he said, Ayelet, I don't like you, not even a little bit. Get that through your thick head. Okay. So one thing that's important to know about manifestation is that where your thoughts go or where your consciousness goes, energy flows. Okay. And that the stories you tell yourself about yourself become your reality. So that was like my first initial heartbreak, right? Tommy broke my heart. And so, what were the stories I told myself about myself in that moment? What do you think?
I'm not sure. What do you think?
Well, I know what I told myself. I said, I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. I'm not valuable. I'm not pretty. No boy is ever going to like me. And what ended up happening at age 8, because I wasn't equipped with the tools to know how to like navigate my system back then, I just fell into believing a false narrative about myself. Right. And so there's what I call the experience, and then there's the meaning we attach to the experience. And if we don't do the work of separating the experience from the meaning, then what we attached from a young age to that experience will create our identity as adults.
For
Right.
sure. I hold on one second. I just want to ask you something about that. So when you're unpacking these stories and the meanings that we attach to these stories with your clients, other than regressing them backwards, are there any other things that you would recommend for people to do as a way for them to get to a space where they can be more self-aware of these sort of subconscious blocks from childhood or things like that?
Well, I think just kind of going back and writing down certain memories that stand out for you, right? Like my Tommy story was a memory that stood out. It could be a time where I like was having a really I was like dysregulated as a child one time, and I remember running to my bedroom and slamming the door and locking it and needing to like self-regulate by myself, even though I didn't have the tools to do that on my own. And so that's a memory. I remember a time when I was in middle school and I had a group of girlfriends who, middle school girls, they can be catty sometimes. And they just one day all came to school deciding that they were going to like kick me out of the friend group for no apparent reason.
Oh, that's hard.
That's, it's hard. Like for a little girl, like that is
Yeah.
traumatizing.
Yeah.
And so even just starting to like write down some of these memories and then writing down the meaning, like what are the stories you're telling yourself about yourself in correspondence to that experience.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so just to start by getting clear, what are some of the identities or beliefs that I've picked up about myself as a result of some of the like uncomfortable experiences I've had growing up? And we're all going to have something, we're all going to have something. So I would start there. And then
Mhm.
there's really like inner child healing is really powerful. I mean, I personally really love the two different modalities, like therapeutic modalities. One is internal family systems therapy, which I recommend for adults. There's also somatic experiencing, which is about releasing the trauma that gets stored in the body. Because talk therapy can only get a person so far. Like, how much can you just talk and people come to me after they've been in therapy, talk therapy for years and years and years, because, I kind of go into this place where my approach is about getting people to become independent of their therapist. I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to be dependent on me. I want people to come out feeling empowered
Yeah.
and
But it,
self-resourced. But
yeah, but at
mhm.
the same time, isn't IFS part of it's used in the context of therapy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a therapeutic
Right.
process.
So there are therapists that like people could find a therapist that specializes in IFS. It's
They're
not
called
it's,
practitioners. They're called,
yeah,
even though they do have to go through training to become an IFS practitioner.
yeah.
I personally prefer that over a lot of other things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences with somatic healing? We just did a session about that recently with someone who does that here in Florida. What has that been like for you, the somatic healing practices?
So for me, somatic experiencing, I mean, I love it. And I think because I know that a lot of trauma gets stored in our body, right? Like we feel the emotion in our body. So the like thought process around it might remain as a memory in our head, but just talking about the memory isn't going to release the trauma from where it's stored,
So
right? So
what would be an example of something that you were able to release either through IFS or somatic experiencing that was sort of like a subconscious or a blind spot, something that you use those modalities for to help you or
mhm,
to help someone that you work with?
mhm. Okay. So So let's see. So, okay, I will go with someone who I worked with just because the memory is like right here. When she was 4 years old, her and her older sister decided to like make a pact together and rip each other's like blankie. So they each had a blankie, her and her older sister. And my client, will call her Anna for conversation's sake, right? Her role was to rip her sister's blanket, and her sister was going to rip Anna's blanket. So what happened was the older sister ripped Anna's blanket first, and then the older sister took her own blanket and ran so that Anna couldn't rip her blanket, right? You're
Oh,
following me?
wonderful.
So my client, Anna, took, I think it was a broomstick, she said, some sort of a stick, and started running around her parents' house, chasing her sister because she was like, no, like, it can't be that I'm alone in this. Like, we were in this together and you betrayed me. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
she's chasing her sister. And at one point, the stick hits her mother's china cabinet and the whole thing shatters and all the china shatters. Okay.
I,
And her mother goes to my client at age 4, and she's just like, "What's wrong with you? How could you do this? What were you not thinking?" Right? And like, what does that little 4-year-old girl need in that moment more than anything? She feels so misunderstood. She feels like so betrayed by her sister and now by her mother,
I,
when really she just wanted an opportunity to like have her voice heard. She wanted to be understood. And that was how how any 4-year-old would retaliate in a situation like that. So when we were in a session together, right? Like I brought first when we do this like somatic work, we're working with regulating the nervous system. And the idea is to be self-resourced, to be able to now self-regulate so that we're not looking to our husbands or our parents or our kids to be that source of safety for us, right? Meaning, should our family members feel safe to us? Yes. But should they be the source of the repair? No, we're here now in this world, ultimately alone, right? Ultimately. And it's up to us to do the work. Nobody can do that healing that I need to do for me. That is
right.
my job. And so we got her to a place where she was able to bring safety to her own nervous system. And, I kind of do like a little hodgepodge of methodologies when I'm working with people, but I had her bring her adult self into that scenario and have her adult self give her 4-year-old self what it is she didn't get from her sister or her mom back then. So it's kind of like closing the loop and doing that repair, and also getting her to a place where in her body she feels like she is enough, like she is seen, like she is understood, because she just felt like such a bad person for destroying her mother's china. And that story she told herself of I'm a bad person got carried with her into her adult years. So we went in while she's kind of like reliving this experience and coming in and changing the story, because there's the experience itself. She was triggered, she retaliated. She was setting a boundary, and an important boundary, and that's a superpower in a way. And if you go up to a mama tiger and you're trying to attack her cubs, what is that mama tiger going to do? She's going to attack.
Yeah.
She's going to attack, and rightfully so, rightfully so. So people have this like whole, I think, like misconstrued notion of like boundaries need to be so soft and gentle. No, if someone is crossing a boundary and you've started by establishing a level of softness, but they're still crossing a boundary, sometimes you got to be a mama tiger and you got to establish safety for yourself. And so in these processes, it
Yeah.
becomes a lot about establishing safety for oneself.
So, thank you for that example. That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
Um, it just shows you also how, as moms, how important it is to not be reactive when our kids mess up, right? And to see things from their perspective and their motivations. Like, I feel like in our generation, we're so hyper aware of how we, God forbid, could cause, like you're always trying to prevent causing drama to your kids as adults, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it sounds like before you can even get to the manifestation, you first need to do all of this like repair work first to set the a strong groundwork on on being able to manifest at a certain level. Would that be accurate or is it parallel? Can you do both at the same time?
Yeah, so a lot of it can be done simultaneously. And I find that a lot of the repair work, repairing the childhood stuff, happens in a more accelerated way when you're doing the manifestation work side by side. Because manifestation is about really like visualizing your highest self, visualizing your potential as though you already are, like a daughter of the divine or a son of the divine, right? Or whatever it is you want to see yourself as an actualized being, even though we're always in a process of self-actualizing. But like, right, there's rungs on the ladder. So what is the next version of you that you want to see yourself embody? So really visualizing that and doing the like what I call, I've created these hypno activations, which are a combination of hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, visualization, and somatic work. And the client will close their eyes and I'll take them through like a 20-minute activation where we start to like shift the frequencies and rewrite the information that exists like on a cellular level. Like we go into our cells and we're going into the quantum field simultaneously to start to see the possibility, the infinite possibility of who you can become while doing this deep inner excavation work from childhood. It just accelerates the process.
I love this concept of the hypnoactivation. That sounds really incredible. Do you have anything available online, whether like on your podcast or YouTube, anything like that we could share with people watching this that could get a taste of the hypnoactivation?
Absolutely. So I have like a free activation giveaway. So I'm happy to give you like a link and you
Yeah.
can just if you want to put it in the show notes because it's
Yes.
it's it's like a more generic one. When I work with people one-on-one, I get really specific
Yeah.
about the activations, but there is one that's super generic. And it's similar to the one that I did when I for 21 days when I was ready to manifest my husband.
Yeah.
So I'm
And
happy to share.
why, thank you for that. That would be awesome.
Sure.
Oh, tell me more about um the 21 day. I mean, 21 days is pretty fast. How did you get to that number and does it actually work that quickly?
Yeah, so it can. It absolutely can. It could work even more quickly. And in a lot of my courses, what's amazing is like, I remember actually came to LA and did a manifestation event one evening and guided a hypno activation for women in LA, men and women in LA. And before we started the activation, one of the women in the group, there was something that for like months and months and months, she was trying to manifest and get an answer on, and it just wasn't budging. She just wasn't cracking through getting her answer. And we did the activation, and by the end of it, we closed and she was like crying and she just wanted to share with the group a text message that she received at the very end of the activation with the answer that she was looking for months and months and months. So, and that was what her manifestation was when we did the activation, and she had manifested it in 20 minutes of doing the
Wow.
activation. Yeah.
Wow. So you're saying manifestation doesn't necessarily need to take so much time. Like it could actually happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, like what is time? What is time? Time is a human construct, and because we've gotten so wrapped up in the beginning, middle, and end, right? Time is important. If you and I have a date for lunch at 2 o'clock, it's important for me to know what time it is so that I'm I'm not late to our lunch, right? So time serves a purpose, but time doesn't actually exist. Time is a human construct that gives organization and structure to our lives.
Yeah.
But really, but there is something that I teach called time bending,
Uh-huh.
right? Because when you're actually ascending or accessing the quantum field, that's beyond time, right? Like what is time? That's beyond time. And so it's important to start first and foremost reestablishing your definition of time or your perception of time because most people the way they grew up or the stories they told themselves when they were little, based on what their parents said, was like, hurry, hurry, hurry. We're going to be late. Get dressed, get dressed. School starts in 30 minutes. Eat your breakfast, eat your breakfast. We're going to be late, right? It's this like tension around time that
Mhm.
gets instilled in us from a very young age. And
Right.
so we grow up thinking that, like,
Well, yeah, I
that,
mean, and in a practical sense, like I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm a matchmaker. And unfortunately, there's a lot of single people out there, and time does matter. Like there's women that have a biological clock and can have children within a certain period of time. So they do feel that pressure and they want to understand why are they not yet manifesting their soulmate? Why haven't yet had they have their children? Men tend to have less of that stress. You
they
know,
have it in a different way. For men, it's about more like success and accomplishment. And
right.
so they also have this construct of time. It just manifests differently for them, I think.
Right. So when you have, I mean, I would like to know if you have an offering specific for people who want to manifest love and soulmates, because I find that a lot of people struggle. They could be very successful professionally, like super successful, know how to manifest in so many aspects of their lives, but for some reason, manifestation doesn't transfer over into the personal life. So what do you do with those types of people, super high achievers, super high performers, but somehow have this block with attracting love into their life?
Yeah. So in terms of to your answer to your question, do I have an offer? So the timing is really aligned because I'm going to be launching a free webinar in the next couple of weeks. So I'm happy to send you the link to that below. And I'm doing it with a colleague of mine. Her name is Sabrina Bendori. I don't know if you know her. But she's like a relationship expert and she's written 17 books on relationships and has like published a whole magazine about relationships. So she's going to be bringing like the practical dating relationship piece to it while I bring in the manifestation piece. And we're going to give everyone a lot of value as to how you can navigate this process and really it doesn't have to take a lot of time, right? If we believe it's going to take a lot of time, it's because it's already taken a lot of time. So we're carrying the baggage from the past
Yes.
to the present and it's affecting our future, which is
Yes.
what I said, like people who are struggling with manifesting their soulmates in a accelerated way, it really is important to go back to the drawing board and start to journal about your perception of time. Do you think there's not enough hours in the day? Right? Are you constantly fighting against the clock? Do you feel pressure that you're not getting enough done or you don't have enough time to get things done? Right?
Yeah.
That means you're probably living with a certain notion that time is working against you.
Yeah.
There's actually a Gemara that says he or she who resists time, time resists back. Meaning, if we're like fighting against the clock, then time is actually going to fight back and cause more resistance, therefore taking more time for that thing to manifest. But the Gemara goes into saying he or she who surrenders to time, time surrenders to them.
Oh, that's so interesting. And
Mhm.
is one webinar enough? I mean, I would imagine that they would need a course on love. I don't know if one webinar is going to be enough to shift, especially since you mentioned that so much of it is subconscious. They have to do the inner work, they have to do the repair. That
Yeah.
takes time.
Totally, totally. So, okay, so I will say the webinar, we're going to offer a lot of value for those who don't want to take the course, but we will also be offering in that webinar access to a course that her and I are going to be doing, and they'll have access to us, Q&As, like a whole, it's a whole, everything we're talking about, we're going to go deep into uncovering and doing the inner excavation work.
Where would people, you're going to send me the link, but will it also be on a website? Like, where do people find more info? Like on your social media, things like that?
They can go to ayeletpolonsky.com. I have a bunch of already existing courses there.
Yeah.
Or if they want to wait specifically for the Manifest Love course, then I recommend they get on like the wait list, which I'll give you the link to that so that they can join the free webinar. And once
Okay.
they're in the free webinar, they can sign up for the course itself. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm on Instagram, the Manifestation Mindset. They can
Okay.
look up Ayelet Polonsky. They'll find me, and I'm always happy to answer questions. If anyone listening is like, I saw you on Rina's podcast, just say hi.
Okay. And that sounds awesome. And my other question to you was, I'm assuming
Mm.
that the number one thing people want to manifest or that they come to you with is love, right? That's
Mhm.
a big one. I would
Mhm.
imagine that's a pretty popular
Yeah.
manifestation request. But um
Mm.
my other question to you is like, what else? Like with the whole concept of finding your purpose, this whole idea of being in alignment with your higher self and with Hashem, with the source. What do you offer around that?
So you'll believe it or not, I've taken a lot of surveys from previous clients or people who have done my courses, and I'll ask them a bunch of questions to find themes in what it is they're looking to accomplish. And it's like, yes, love is number one always. But on top of that, people really want inner peace. I mean, they also want a lot of money, but like the from the emotional state, what they're looking for emotionally is inner
Yeah.
peace. So many of us are just struggling to know how to navigate the landscape of our emotions and how to self-regulate because we were probably never taught proper regulation skills.
Yes.
Inner peace is a big one, I find.
So is inner peace, is that another way of saying inner peace is regulating our nervous system? Is that another way of putting it? Like how do you help people that come, I mean, inner peace is that's a lifetime's
Hmm. Hmm.
goal. So how do you help people with that? That's not something you could manifest in 21 days.
Right. Um, depends on the person, who they are, and where their starting point is, right? So look, I think it's just really important to say that like once someone does the manifestation work, they don't become God, right? God is God. We are still human. And so long as our heart is pulsating and doing that contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion movement, we as human beings are going to emulate that and constantly be going through this process of expansion, contraction. So the universe is going to show us a situation that's going to cause us to constrict, right? Which is a divine lesson. It's an opportunity for growth, right? And then there's going to be times where like everything is hunky dory and everything is going well. And we're like so grateful to God for all of the blessings, right?
Mhm.
And so my goal is not to get someone to a point where like their heart is in a constant state of expansion because you'll get there when you die. You know what I mean? But in the human experience, you don't want that. But my goal is to get people to learn how to navigate the different movements with more acceptance, right? It's like once we realize that this is all necessary and all part of the human experience, and we learn how to bring acceptance into it, then it doesn't become so scary. Like when I'm going through an upheaval, like we were living in Israel for the last 8 years, and then October 7th hit, and then we made a big jump into deciding to come to America for a couple of weeks before going back to Israel. And once we got to America, it was like Source was like, I'm keeping you right here. And that was like 5 months for me of real confusion and turmoil. Like I was leaving my whole community in Israel. I was leaving it's just like a whole life, a dream. I was leaving a vision there to be here and start from scratch. We had to find a house overnight. We had to furnish the house overnight. We had to find schools for the kids overnight. It was chaos, right?
Yeah.
That's a constriction. But while I was going through the constriction, like I have this process where I create space around it, right? Constriction wants space because if I'm constricted on top of this whole experience, I'm just going to feel like everything is collapsing on top of me. So I create breath and I create space and I access the pain. I access the discomfort. Like, let me just be with it. Can I be present with what is?
Hmm.
Suffering is a choice.
Yeah.
Suffering is a choice. And if I'm resisting what is, That resistance is what creates the suffering because what is.
Hmm.
What is. So can I lean into it? Can I let myself feel the intensity? Oh, I'm alive. It's intense. It's showing me that I'm alive. It's showing me I have a heartbeat. God bless. And then from that place, create space around it, right? And start to learn how to like move the energy in and out of my body so it doesn't feel like I'm under a pile of bricks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. I think that as a parent, I'm learning to do that for my children. Like, I think there's something about our culture or our society that tells us that if you're unhappy or uncomfortable or in pain or in challenge, that you right away need to get out of it or like pivot out of it. Like that, rather than feeling the feeling and feeling whatever it is that's coming up for you and just letting it go through you, there's this constant feeling of like, oh, I can't feel that. I need to push it away. I need to get over it. I need to heal. Like we're so quick to move out of it, which is makes sense. I know no one wants to feel negative emotions, but I hear what you're saying about like surrendering to it, that there's something there that we're supposed to experience, right? Um, my question to you about all of this stuff is really to do with also related to this, as you were talking, I was thinking about this too, how in the times that we live in, so many people are drawn to like psychedelic journeys and all this plant medicine that's become super popular. I think it is connected to what you were saying about having to do inner child work, tapping into subconscious, understanding our blind spots, all that kind of stuff. And I'd be curious to know like what your perspective is on that because I feel like there's a reason why God wants this to be so highly experienced in the world right now. Like there to tap into that. So I'd be curious to know about your experiences and how that shaped you, but also how it helps you with helping others.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm a big advocate of like psychedelic assisted therapy, right? So I think the problem with plant medicine or psychedelics, call it what you will, is that now a lot of people, as they're becoming more and more popular, people think that they can do journeys that are self-led. So they're like meeting up with a group of friends and going into one of their basements and getting their hands on whatever plant medicine they can access and experimenting. That is a real big no-no in my book because it's not just about the experience itself while a person is on medicine, but more so what's more important is the integration period. Like what happens after you've had this like breakthrough experience, and now you have to get thrown back into the day-to-day world, your real life, and you don't know how to merge the two. Merge this like real big, beautiful, euphoric experience you had, or sometimes it can really be a real slap in the face type of journey, and all are important and all are beautiful, but how do we then integrate that into day-to-day life? So without having the support of an experienced facilitator, a person can really get lost in that maze. But I am a huge advocate of it. I started my journey with plant medicine when I was 22. And when I was 22, I was very like young and adventurous. Okay, I'm still adventurous and curious, but I was,
You're also still young, which
and
is
I'm also still young. I'm also, thank you for that. And within a matter of 2 weeks, I had heard three different people from three different sources say the word ayahuasca. And I had never heard the word ayahuasca in my life. I had never done any form of psychedelic or plant medicine in my life. And so you know, for me, it was like, okay, it must be a sign. I heard it three times. Let me go and explore it. So I researched what this ayahuasca thing is. And I saw that like a lot of it, and for me, I really like to go to the source of where things come from. Like that's why I went to India and like I could have gone to an ashram in upstate New York, but like I go to like the source of where these cultures and tribal traditions stem from. And so I booked a flight. I went to the Amazon jungle in Peru. And I spent significant time in the jungle with the Shipibo tribe. So the Shipibo tribe are indigenous to the jungle to Peru, and they from like birth, they're brought into this culture, this ayahuasca culture where they're, even some, I know one of my teachers who's a shaman, he started facilitating ayahuasca journeys when he was 8 years old, right? And he's brilliant and he's a master at what he does. And so you're really deep in,
That sounds wild to me, an 8-year-old shaman. That's pretty crazy.
yeah, yeah, but that's how like it's a whole different cultural structure, right? Like in the jungle, they learn how to commune with nature in a completely different, we're completely shut off from that in the Western world. Like completely, well, okay, maybe some people are more attuned to nature than others. I don't want to
Yeah.
but there it's like from the moment they're born, they learn how to hear for a wild animal that's like miles away, right? They can really attune themselves to nature. So they develop from a very young age a certain like sixth sense, we'll call it, a certain attunement, a certain awareness that we all have access to. But the same way we're kind of trained to like go to college, go to school, go to college, graduate, get a job, like it's just very that's what you do in our culture, right? There, it's a completely different cultural understanding. And so they know how to look for certain medicines that I believe God put in Mother Nature, right? It's like Gaia's medicine, it's earth medicine.
Yeah.
And ayahuasca is one of them. So that's where I started. And I did a number of journeys myself with ayahuasca in the jungle and had like one big breakthrough after another. I brought a lot of years of trauma to the surface so that I could really start looking at it and working with it in a new way. And I really think that experience like opened me up to like all the work that I'm doing now.
And when you went to Peru, what I mean, these tribal people that were guiding the journeys, they weren't therapists, right? So how do you integrate the before and after if I mean they're guiding the ritual, the ceremony, but who do you process that with?
So yeah, so I think some of the centers in Peru will have like an integration center for you
Yeah.
to integrate your process with. Some of them don't, which I really don't appreciate. But I do think no matter what, and there's plenty of access to facilitators in America, even. And so I think the right way to do it is you have a journey, and then the person who facilitates you in your journey has integration calls with you, for a couple weeks after the journey, and that for a person to have their own therapist after any psychedelic experience and ideally a therapist who, if you're going to be experienced, like experimenting and exploring plant medicine, I think having some sort of practitioner or a therapist who is experienced with plant medicine is probably beneficial. Although in my experience, that's just like a really perfect aligned match.
Yeah.
But if
That makes
someone's going to go all the way to Peru, have a therapist lined up for you when you get back.
Yeah, makes sense to have that support. I'm
Yeah.
curious, we started out our conversation last time about how having the guru really sort of opened up your spiritual path. And now I would imagine you're more like a guru for a lot of people in the way of, meaning like, you're a spiritual coach or, leader that helps people um with their transformation. So do you have someone that you go to now that's your go like I would imagine that there's that need that after you establish that for such a long time that you had that person that you looked up to. Do you have that in your life now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have many.
I was gonna say you probably have many people. Yeah.
I am not one to say, look at me doing all this work. I'm so evolved, whatever that means, and now my job is done. My work is done. You know what I mean? No, I have a lot of evolving to do. And I want to be evolving till the day I die. At 120, I want to say that I've turned every stone that I possibly could turn, and for me, that's just, I love this work and it feels, but I have an IFS therapist who's also, she's not in this country, but we meet virtually every week. And she's also a psychedelic assisted therapist. So she really has the best of both worlds. And I also have a community of people who I do a lot of deep inner work with. I have a shaman, I have a teacher, I have a husband who loves to facilitate me when I let him.
You have your children, right?
I have my children who are my biggest teachers.
Biggest teachers on
Totally.
the planet for sure.
Totally.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. This was wonderful. Thank you for allowing us to have the time and the space to do two parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to wish you lots of success with your work. I think you're doing incredible things in the world, and you should continue to be successful and to go out there. And I really hope that a lot of people that are listening tap into the love workshops and all the things that you chatted about, and I'll be more than happy to share with everyone some of the resources. And yeah, just thank you so much. This was such a
Amazing.
treat. It was so
Yeah,
great.
thank you so much, Rena. I love chatting with you. And if anybody is in the tri-state, New Jersey, New York area, my husband and I, we do a lot of like sacred ceremonial type of gatherings. So feel free to come say hi. And thank you, Rena. I hope to see you again
Okay.
soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.